Hey, Pete.
Hey, man.
You ever have a gremlin in your computer system?
I think I hear one right now.
Oof. I'm Adam Ennis,
And I'm Peter
and
Martin.
you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Daily jazz advice coming at you.
Daily jazz advice, some questionable dates about movies.
Is that questionable?
I believe it's 84. Yeah.
Let me check that. Gremlins movie. Yes, 1984. You're correct.
Bam.
Well, I was just barely a teenager, a 13-year-old then, so that's probably why I wasn't really paying much attention.
I was a young child scared out of his mind.
I was laughing
at
at
those
little
monsters.
I was laughing at little kids in the theater that were
It was
scared.
terrifying. Bad dreams, nightmares, all that stuff.
Do you remember when they compared Miles Davis to a gremlin on Saturday Night Live right around that
My
time? That was horrible.
gosh, It's all coming together because today's episode, well, first of all, today's episode is sponsored by SoundSlice.
Yes.
Amazing browser-based software that syncs up music notation with videos. It's a perfect way to transcribe. We talk about listening, transcribing here on this podcast
Yeah.
every day almost. We use SoundSlice to do it. We use SoundSlice here at Open Studio for all of our courses.
Yeah.
Adrian and his team, they're musicians, first of all. They know what they're doing.
Yes.
And it's just an amazing resource.
It's
amazing
magical.
tool. Yeah.
We don't use the term magical a lot around here, except when you have been known to bring your magic kit. Then we do say that's magical.
I wish I was a magician instead of a musician.
Well, SoundSlice is truly magical what it does. Just go check it out, soundslice.com. Check out their community. A lot of exciting things over there. I think that you guys are going to love it just like we do.
That's right. So today we're talking about Miles. I don't think he looks like a gremlin.
I don't think so. I said SNL said that he did.
But here's a question from Theory.
Hey guys, this is a Theory from Sweden again. I hope you're doing fine. I'm doing great. My question is, or I can start like this. I have phases with musicians or pianists where I really dig deep into their music. So, for example, 2 months ago, I didn't know who Keith Jarrett is, and now all of a sudden he's my favorite musician. Now I'm finally trying to dig into Miles Davis, because with every pianist and musician that I encountered, he was a common denominator, common influencer. But my question is, and no disrespect, I'm genuinely wondering, can you talk a little bit about why Miles was so great and is looked up on in the jazz community? Why is that? And what can I take out of listening to him? What can I listen to? And what is your opinion? What are your opinions on Miles?
Thanks, Theory, for the question. It's a good
thanks.
question, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Great question. First of all, now I finally know how Theory is. I thought that was a French name. Maybe it is. Swedish, is
He's
it?
from Sweden, yeah.
Yeah, but there was that great footballer from France.
Thierry Henry.
Right.
Yeah,
Ouais.
something like that.
Ouais.
Ouais.
That's what I thought it was, but now I know it's Theory. So, good. Well, so he's talking about going in different phases of going deep, of checking out certain artists, which we've done a lot ourselves, and we actually do the opposite here. We go shallow, 10 minutes a day, but that's okay. No, but you know what they say about going through phases? Phases leads to phrases. No, it didn't.
That's
Well,
not
it could be.
That's
It
not
could
a
be a
saying.
thing. It could be.
Wait, Alexis, is Peter off his game today?
Also, snitches dig ditches. Don't forget about that. Okay.
Now that
Anyway.
sounds threatening. But to the heart of Theory's question is what makes Miles Davis so great. I think it's something that we can address.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Have you been thinking about legacies of some of these musicians and artists from different eras? You know, Miles in his personal life would not be okay today.
No. He's
Yeah.
not. He's not set up for today's social climate. But he was actually quite a social innovator, I think, as well as musical. I think that's
Absolutely.
probably the first thing to think about, his impact just on kind of entertainment. You know, his interviews. I know there was that interview. I think it was in either Esquire or Playboy magazine that was very, very insightful and controversial and much talked about. I mean, he was a master of marketing and publicity.
Sure.
But there was always that foundation of music, which is what we'll probably talk about mostly here today. But I think, in terms of what made him so great, we can kind of look at the sort of, I guess, micro level first of just him as a player, as a trumpeter. And I think, things to listen for and to check out is his phrasing, his sound, his individuality, his voice, his phrasing, like how consistent he was in terms of, as he moved through different styles and periods of his own career, and also as music, jazz music and popular music was evolving very quickly, how he kept up but always kept that vision of his own voice within the music, I think, so well. And that's something that, a lot of trumpet players, I mean, you talk about other kind of iconic trumpet players, they're definitely known for that, saxophone players, singers, and then maybe pianists and stuff as well. But he really set the stage, I think, for a horn player to have a voice, to be consistent with it, a beautiful voice, a beautiful sound, beautiful phrasing, and then just economy of motion in terms of the music. He was such a master of saying just enough but not too much, getting busy when it was appropriate, laying back when it was, being going for something, taking some chances. Vulnerability, absolutely. So those are a few things. These are a few of my favorite things.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the thing that stands out when I think Miles, the first thing that stands out is his artistic voice and how strong that was and how strong it developed over the years. I mean, when you listen to him playing, bebop with Charlie Parker or Birth of the Cool of that era or whatever.
Yeah.
He's playing a lot more notes than we usually think. Like people say, oh, Miles didn't play a lot, but in that era he did play a lot.
He did.
And he could play a lot, and he had an amazingly rich sound and was very agile on the trumpet and really had something to say from an early age. But what I think sets him apart as an artist is that artistic voice that he was just constantly striving to refine and was never satisfied and was never resting on what he had done. I mean, the guy made Kinda Blue. You could just kind of pack it in after that, right? And say, like, okay, I'm not going to do anything else.
And I'm out.
But then the second great quintet happens.
Yeah.
And even that, you could have been like, okay, well, I played with Charlie Parker. I made Birth of the Cool. Then I did all that stuff in the mid-'50s and late '50s. Kinda Blue, the second great quintet, I can just stop there. And then he went into the, In a Silent Way, Bitches Brew era, changing again, not being satisfied, and even going against some of the people who loved him, musicians who loved him and critics who loved him, to fulfill his own, artistic voice. And then again in the 80s when he changed again and really somewhat invented what is now smooth jazz. I mean, it's like he's a huge pioneer in all of these kinds of music. In each decade of jazz's evolution up until the time he died. And that's really what his legacy is, I think.
I was thinking about a word you said earlier, vulnerability, and I've heard that attributed to, to his playing, his kind of style, his musical attitude that came through in his music. And I think that that's spot on. And the other thing that to me goes along with that is uncompromising.
Yeah.
He had a vulnerability and he had an uncompromising nature in terms of the way he improvised. Certainly the way he put his bands together probably and structured the music, but just in terms of the way he soloed. And so what that kind of brought out was this great edge. And, he didn't play perfectly. Maybe towards the beginning of his career when he was, playing with Charlie Parker and trying to play in a certain way, but you already heard his sound. But once he hit kind of, still relatively young, certainly in his 30s, early 30s and on, man, he let that vulnerability, and then he didn't compromise his artistic integrity, but that didn't mean he wasn't going for stuff. He was.
Yeah.
So he had this ability to make it just as thrilling when he would miss as when he would make and try to go for something again. He never played it safe, He didn't play it safe. He was uncompromising in his artistic vision.
Absolutely.
At least that's the way it sounds,
And that takes an amazing amount of courage.
Courage.
Think about that. Think about how much bravery it takes to not be compromised in your artistic vision, even when people don't like what you're going to do.
Right.
And you know that, and you're just like, well, this is what's hot. This is what I think is happening, and I'm doing it because I believe in me. That takes so much inner strength and confidence. It's really amazing. And we've heard, I mean, in Herbie's autobiography, he talks about how that was an inspiration for him, that he learned that from Miles, this uncompromising attitude of like, okay, I'm going to let my voice ring out no matter what. This is what I think. I mean, when you can mix those two things together, that vulnerability, that willingness to take risks, and then your courage to stick with that conviction and not compromise artistically, that is a dangerous combination.
That's right.
And it's a risky combination.
It is,
because you could very well fall on your face and not be able to make a living and all this stuff. And
it's a bouillabaisse of risk and artistic flair that's quite nice when sautéed up correctly.
Well, exactly. When it comes together with the right artist, it's like this magical thing happens. And I think Miles he's not just one of those people. He's the epitome of that.
Yeah. So I think the other side, in terms of, what to take from, I think you mentioned, he was asking about what to take from doing a deep dive on Miles Davis and what to listen for. I think as much, we're talking about his playing now, the whole other thing that I think he's known for and is such a force in it is his leadership of bands and music and albums and kind of projects. Mm-hmm. So something beyond just the trumpet, and like his ability to put the right combinations of players together, put them in a place of success, let them do their own thing, say the right thing, which often was very little, but from what you hear from, Chick Corea and Keith Jarrett, I'm talking about the piano players, Herbie Hancock, but Ron Carter too, Tony Williams, Wayne Shorter, all the different stories you hear about how he wouldn't say a lot, but he'd say something sometimes. But his ability to, craft these advanced musical situations that really flourished, on their own as bands and as projects, but then kind of where it sprouted out and were the roots of this whole modern jazz music for all these other musicians to go on and do the same thing. I mean, he taught these young players how to be great leaders in the music, When you talk about, like, Shirley Horn talks about all she learned from, like, opening up for Miles at the Vanguard in the 60s and stuff. So, like, his and Miles was not afraid to take either. I mean, he took from Ahmad Jamal and put that through his filter with his bands and stuff. Yeah. But I mean, he really had an outsized influence, I think, on the music beyond just trumpet players.
We're talking about Keith Jarrett has referenced him as someone who's influenced his artistic goals as a leader. Yeah. John McLaughlin and I mean, even
John Scofield,
like all those late band members.
Yeah, Branford Marsalis, Kenny Garrett.
All these people that played with Miles, even in the later period. Miles is still shaping jazz in that sense. Yeah. That these guys are now shaping jazz. You know what I mean? So it's really something. For playing wise, for me, man, I like to go back to the Prestige records, the cooking, relaxing, all that stuff that he was trying to get out of the contract on.
Chilling, maxing, relaxing, cooking.
Feeling all cool, playing some jazz down by the pool. But he was, they're playing standards, and his playing on that is so precise. Yeah. And lyrical, and the improvisation, like, those are great places to start your transcription journey theory if you're thinking about transcribing some Miles, because they're easy to hear. You probably know the tunes. If you know any standards, you could find something, and then you get an idea of the kind of melodic economy Miles improvised with.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. I think too, just the last thing to mention. I was just kind of hearing those Prestige records, the sound of them. Yeah. He was, a real innovator and paid a lot of attention to detail about making albums. Yep. He came from a time when that was important, and I think just in terms of how the trumpet sounded, he was always, teaming up with great producers and engineers, but he really cared about how the whole sound of everything. Like, you can hear on some of those outtakes when he's instructing different, play block chords or whatever. He was trying to get a whole sound, and I think it was the aesthetic of that period of a great jazz album. We owe so much to Miles with his whole aesthetic, and then also like his fashion aesthetic in terms of how it's connected with jazz. He kind of had, in our time, I always think of Roy Hargrove, not just because he's a trumpeter, but because Roy really cared about the entire aesthetic of the music, how it looked on stage,
absolutely,
how it sounded on recordings and all that.
That's so great, man. Yeah. Well, thank you, Theory, for the question. Enjoy your deep dive into Miles for the first time. I'm envious of you because I wish I could listen to some of this music.
You can dive back, get back in the pool, man.
Can't hear for the first time again, though, Pete. Unfortunately, you know what I mean? There's some good moments about to happen for you, Theory. So thank you for that. You can go to you'llhearit.com if you want to leave us a speak pipe. We love your questions.
We do.
So get them in.
Get them in. Go to you'llhearit.com. Leave us a speak pipe. Oh, you just said that. Okay, I'm
I
saying
did.
it again, man. Say it twice because it sounds so nice.
And check out Soundslice. Go to soundslice.com. We're going to leave a link in here for a link to we have our theme for this podcast transcribed in Soundslice. You can watch it, go by, you can mess around with it, you can loop it, you can see what Peter Martin's playing. Go check that out, soundslice.com.
Right. And now our big promotion from last week is unfortunately over.
It is.
Yeah. But we've got a new one coming later this week. So we're not quite ready to announce it yet. I don't know if you knew that.
I don't know anything.
You don't know anything. That's okay.
No.
But tomorrow you're going to know. And until then,
You'll hear it.